Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
This one's really interesting. You sent over the Wikipedia article on Plato's Allegory of the Cave, and I have to say this is one of those things that
Yeah.
really just sticks with you.
Mm.
It's so powerful and makes you think about so many things like knowledge and reality and even politics in a different way.
It really does. I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing how relevant this allegory still is today, even though it was written so long ago.
Yeah, and it really forces us to think about like what we perceive as real. If what we think we know is just a shadow of the truth.
Right, exactly. It's like the allegory is this invitation to question everything we take for granted.
So, okay, let's dive into this a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you kind of set the scene for us? What's this cave all about, and who are these prisoners?
Okay, so picture this.
Mm-hmm.
You're chained in a cave, your whole life facing a blank wall.
Mm-hmm.
It's dark, and all you can see are these shadows flickering on the wall.
Whoa, okay, that
Yeah.
sounds kind of creepy.
Yeah, it's meant to be a bit unsettling. And the thing is, those shadows are all the prisoners know. That's their reality.
Oh, wow. So they don't even realize there's a whole world outside the cave.
Nope. They have no concept of anything beyond those shadows. It's like their entire existence is defined by this limited perspective.
And they're okay with that.
Well, they don't know any different.
Yeah.
It's like imagine being born into a world where you only see in black and white. You wouldn't even know that color exists.
I never thought of it that way. That's a good point. It's like they're trapped in this, what do they call it, a filter bubble?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy. It's like they're surrounded by information that only reinforces their limited view of the world.
It makes you wonder what would happen if one of those prisoners were suddenly freed.
Well, that's where the allegory gets really interesting. Imagine that prisoner being dragged out of the cave into the sunlight.
Talk about a shock to the system.
Right. From darkness to blinding light. It'd be completely disorienting.
So this journey out of the cave is like a symbol for something bigger, right?
Exactly. It represents the process of enlightenment, of moving from ignorance to knowledge.
Like that moment when you learn something that completely changes your perspective.
Right. And the freed prisoner in the allegory goes through all these stages. He's in pain, he's confused, he's even tempted to go back to the familiar darkness of the cave.
But eventually,
But eventually his eyes adjust. He sees the sun, he sees the world as it truly is, and that's where the real journey begins.
wow. So it's not just about escaping the cave, it's about what you do once you're out there.
Exactly. It's about embracing the truth, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it challenges everything you thought you knew.
So this whole allegory is about more than just seeing, it's about understanding.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about moving beyond those surface appearances
Right.
and digging deeper to grasp the true nature of things.
Okay, so we've got these prisoners trapped in a cave, seeing only shadows. And this journey out of the cave represents enlightenment. But what about those shadows themselves? What do they represent?
Well, the shadows represent the illusions we mistake for reality. They're like the distorted versions of truth that we cling to because they're familiar and comfortable.
Okay, so it's like we're all kind of prisoners in our own ways, trapped by our own limited perspectives.
That's the challenge Plato throws down to us. He's asking us to question everything we think we know and to be open to the possibility that there's more to reality than what we see on the surface.
And the thing is, it's so easy to get stuck in those comfortable caves, isn't it?
It is. It's human nature to seek out information that confirms what we already believe. But the allegory warns us against the dangers of staying in that echo chamber.
Right, because if we only ever see shadows, we'll never know the true beauty and complexity of the world outside the cave.
Exactly. And that's why the journey of the freed prisoner is so important. It shows us that there's always more to learn, always another level of understanding to reach.
Now, you mentioned something about objects being carried behind the prisoners. What's that all about?
Oh, right. Well, those objects, they're actually key to understanding one of Plato's most important ideas, the theory of forms.
Okay, now you're going to have to explain that one to me because I'm not sure I get it.
So the objects themselves, they're not the real point. What matters are the shadows they cast.
So the objects are like stand-ins for something else.
Exactly. They represent the forms, which are like the true essences of things, the unchanging blueprints that exist beyond our senses.
Okay, give me an example. I'm a bit of a visual learner.
Sure, imagine a tree. The shadow of a tree is just a fleeting image. But the form of tree represents the essence of all trees, the blueprint that defines what a tree is, regardless of its size, shape, or color.
The forms are like the ultimate reality.
God, they're the true nature of things that we can only grasp through reason and philosophical thinking.
So in a way, the prisoners are mistaking those shadows for the real deal.
Exactly. And that's where the allegory gets really thought-provoking. Are we all, in a sense, Prisoners in our own caves, mistaking shadows for reality?
That's a pretty deep question. And I think we're going to need a little more time to unpack that, so we'll pick this up in the next part of our deep dive. But until then, I'm definitely going to be thinking about all those shadows out there.
Me too. It's a good reminder to stay curious and to keep questioning everything we think we know.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Plato's Allegory of the Cave. We'll see you in the next part.
See you then.
Yeah, it is unsettling, right? Like, how do we know we're not just seeing shadows?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what makes this allegory so powerful. It's a challenge to really look at what we believe and why.
Okay, but how do we do that? I mean, it's not like we can just snap our fingers and suddenly see the world differently.
You're right. It's a process. And it starts with being aware of those shadows.
Yeah.
Recognizing that they exist.
So how do we recognize them?
Well, for one thing, think about how much our reality is shaped by what we see online.
Oh, yeah, good point. Social media, the news, all that stuff. It's like we're constantly bombarded with information, and it's hard to know what's real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that information is tailored to us, based on our browsing history and what we've liked in the past.
So it's like those filter bubbles you were talking about before.
Exactly. We end up in these echo chambers where we only see and hear things that reinforce our existing beliefs.
Which is kind of like those prisoners in the cave, right? They're only seeing what's presented to them.
Right. And the thing is, it's comfortable. It's easy to stay in that cave where everything feels familiar and safe.
But if we want to really understand the world, we need to step out of that comfort zone, don't we?
We do. It's not always easy, but it's necessary.
Okay, so let's say I'm ready to break free from my cave. What's my first step?
Well, the first step is being willing to question everything.
Everything.
Well, maybe not everything, but, the things that you take for granted. The beliefs you hold dear.
So basically, don't just accept things blindly.
Exactly. Be skeptical, but not cynical. There's a difference.
So be open to new information, but also be critical of it.
Exactly. Ask yourself, who's presenting this information? What's their agenda? What perspectives might be missing?
That's a lot to think about. It's like you're saying we need to become detectives in our own lives.
In a way, yes. It's about being active and engaged in how we consume information.
So it's not just about what we think, but how we think.
Exactly. And it's about being willing to change our minds when presented with new evidence.
So it's about growth.
Absolutely. It's about constantly learning and evolving our understanding of the world.
And that's not always comfortable, is it?
Not always. But think back to that prisoner. He experiences pain and confusion when he first leaves the cave. But ultimately, that discomfort leads to something much greater.
Freedom.
Yes, freedom from ignorance.
Yeah.
Freedom from illusion. And that's what Plato is trying to show us, that the pursuit of truth is worth the effort.
Even if it means challenging our most deeply held beliefs.
Especially then. Because that's where the real growth happens, when we're willing to let go of what we thought we knew and embrace something new.
It's like he's saying that true enlightenment comes from embracing the unknown.
That's a great way to put it. And it's something we can all strive for in our own lives.
So how do we do that? How do we actually go about embracing the unknown?
Well, it starts with curiosity, with being open to new experiences and perspectives.
So get out of our comfort zones.
Exactly. Travel, meet new people. Read books that challenge your worldview.
It's about expanding our horizons.
Exactly. And it's about being willing to admit when we're wrong.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's so important because the moment we think we have all the answers is the moment we stop learning.
So this is all about being humble then.
Humility is a big part of it, yes.
Yeah.
But also courage. The courage to question, the courage to be wrong, the courage to keep learning.
Wow. This deep dive has really given me a new perspective on things. It's like this allegory is a roadmap for how to live a more meaningful life.
That's what I love about it. It's not just some abstract philosophical concept. It's a guide for how to navigate the world and become better thinkers.
And better human beings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? Becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah, it's like this allegory is timeless. It speaks to something deep within us.
It really does. And, the thing is, it's not just about knowledge. It's about wisdom.
Okay, so what's the difference?
While knowledge is about facts and information, wisdom is about applying that knowledge to live a good life.
So how does that relate to the allegory of the cave?
Well, the freed prisoner, he gains knowledge when he sees the world outside the cave. But true wisdom comes from what he does with that knowledge, how he uses it to guide his actions.
So it's about more than just seeing the truth. It's about living it.
Exactly. It's about integrating that knowledge into our lives and becoming better people as a result.
So the allegory of the cave isn't just some abstract philosophical idea. It's a guide for how to live.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing our own limitations, questioning our assumptions, and constantly striving for a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
It's like a blueprint for personal growth.
It is. And you know what's interesting is that even though Plato wrote this allegory thousands of years ago, it feels incredibly relevant today.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, think about all the shadows we're surrounded by now.
Exactly. With social media and the internet, it's easier than ever to get caught up in those filter bubbles.
And to mistake those shadows for reality.
Right. So the challenge for us today is to be even more vigilant, to actively seek out diverse perspectives and to be willing to challenge our own beliefs.
Which is not always easy.
No, it's not. But it's so worth it because the rewards of stepping out of our caves and into light are immense.
So what's one practical thing our listeners can do today to start stepping out of their caves?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
You know, I think one simple thing is to start paying attention to the sources of information you're consuming.
Okay, so like who's writing the articles you're reading or who's producing the videos you're watching?
Exactly. Ask yourself, what are their biases? What are their motivations? And try to get your information from a variety of sources.
So don't just stay in your echo chamber.
Exactly. Branch out. Challenge yourself to see things from different angles.
So it's all about being open-minded and curious?
Absolutely. And about being willing to admit when you're wrong.
Because that's how we grow, right?
Exactly. The moment we stop learning is the moment we stop growing.
You know, it's amazing how much wisdom is packed into this one little allegory.
It really is.
Mm.
And I think that's why it's resonated with people for so long. It speaks to something fundamental about the human condition.
Our desire to understand the world and our place in it?
Exactly. And our capacity for growth and transformation.
Well, I think this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I hope it's inspired our listeners to do the same.
To step out of their caves and into the light of truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to keep questioning, to keep exploring, and to never stop learning.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Plato's Allegory of the Cave.
It was my pleasure.
And for all of you listening out there, keep those philosophical fires burning. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of ideas.